All right, Dave, we're ready to go.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Dave Zapponi, and I'm the Executive Director of ECHO, otherwise known as the Educational Council of Homeowners. We are based in San Jose with satellite offices in Tracy and Laguna Hills, California. I have two of my favorite people speaking today, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for participating in ECHO's live stream event on successful HOA community engagement featuring Julie Ademan. ECHO is a statewide nonprofit association created to support HOA members and engaged homeowners. Our mission is to foster a better quality of life in community associations through education, advocacy, and connection. ECHO is 47 years old, which makes us the oldest association representing the collective interests of HOAs in the state of California. It prides itself on providing quality educational programs to build stronger communities. Before we move on with the program, please note, this webinar is scheduled for an hour and a half. Feel free to leave the meeting at any time. We will mute attendees during the presentation to help with sound quality and to assist the speaker in developing concepts. Please note that we use the chat feature for technical issues and the Q&A feature for content-related questions. You may ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A feature. We will be vetting and answering questions as they come in. For this program, we have added a special opportunity for you, to engage with the speaker. During the second and third audience polls, we will take questions aloud by using the raised hand feature. Simply click on the raised hand icon at the bottom of your screen and we will recognize you if time permits. We hope this new feature will increase your experience by providing more opportunity to interact with the speaker. Please note that we have more than 200 registered for this event, so we might not be able to answer all of your questions. Well, we'll try. Please be courteous and respectful of the meeting participants at all times. We reserve the right to mute or remove participants at any time for any reason. This program is copyrighted by ECHO and will be recorded. We do not give permission to others to record the meeting without prior authorization. A copy of the recording, along with presentation slides, will be emailed to registered participants within 7 to 10 days. ECHO is a nonprofit corporation which has and strictly follows an antitrust policy. It is available for review on our website at www.echo-ca.org. Finally, none of what is said during the meeting shall be construed as specific legal advice from either the speaker or ECHO. If you wish specific advice, we encourage you to ask your attorney. Thank you to our program sponsor, Heritage Bank. We will now hear a few words from this program sponsor. You know?
Thank you, Dave. My name is Lionel Soto. I'm happy to be here. I hope you all are having a great day today. Julie's going to have a great presentation for you. I'm Vice President, Relationship Manager at Heritage Bank of Commerce. So Heritage Bank of Commerce is a community business bank founded in 1994. We have headquarters in San Jose, California. We are a $4 billion award-winning relationship-based bank. Most recently, we received the 2019 Raymond James Community Bankers Cup Award. We have specialty expertise in specific industries, including HOA. We offer treasury services, web-based payment portal, integration services, operating reserve accounts, local lockbox processing, placement services for excess reserves, and HOA loans. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or want to talk about possible relationship. We are in the ECHO directory. And I want to say thank you to Dave for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words. And I'm looking forward to hearing Julie speak.
Thank you. At this time, I will introduce our speaker for today's presentation, Successful HOA Community Engagement. Julie Ademan is the principal of Adamen, Inc., a national consulting and employment firm specializing in community management industry. She is a recognized and designated expert in community management and association management company operations. She is the author and publisher of online classes for community managers, including CAM 101 and board members, Community Association Management 101 for board members, and is collaborating with ECHO to provide a suite of on-demand courses for HOA boards and engaged community members. At this time, I'd like to welcome today's speaker, Julie Adamen. Julie?
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Dave, and thank you, Echo, for having me take part in this seminar. I'm really happy to do so, and it's kind of fun. You know, it's such a weird new world for us, right, with doing stuff all online. I mean, I'm looking at everyone. I can see the three people, our panelists, and Lionel just left, but it's all like we're little disembodied heads. So I think all of you can see us. Is that correct? You can all see us? That's right. Well, I can't see you, so I'm just imagining you out there. So anyway, I want to tell you, welcome to the program. You know, I've been in the business about 33 years, which I know is hard to believe since I'm only 29. But I've been a manager. I sit on 2 boards of directors currently. I don't know what I was thinking, but I do. So manager for about 10 years. The last real job I had, I was the general manager of Palm Valley Country Club in Palm Desert, 1,274 condominium units with a budget of $5.2 million at the time. So since that time, I've worked as a consultant, done various things, as David told you. And over all of these years that I have worked within the industry, I think one of the biggest problems, and you as board members, I'm sure, and homeowners know that one of the biggest problems we have in our industry is communication. And actually, I think most industries have some problem with their communication. It's either we don't have enough, or it's not relevant, or it never gets to the point, or it's never consistent. So we're going to talk about ways to make your communication better, because with better communication, that means your community and your community members have more opportunity to be engaged with the community, meaning becoming a board member or a committee member, or even just having a more positive attitude about the community. And I think we can all agree to that, right? We want our people to have a positive image of our community and a positive thought process about our community. I know where I sit on the board, yes, that's really helpful when people are happier. So, okay, let's go ahead and advance there, Hannah.
All right. So we're actually going to start off this webinar with getting your feedback. I'm going to go ahead. We have an audience poll that we'd love to hear your feedback on right off the bat. So go ahead and answer this, and we'll leave this up for about 20 seconds. So the question is, how many of you feel you need more or better resident engagement? So I see a few of you are raising your hand. So we're going to take questions and comments through the raise hand feature, where we'll allow you to speak on the second and third poll. So not this one, but the next 2 that are coming up. We'll get the audience more engaged during those ones. All right. So end poll. Okay, let me share the results with you guys so you guys can all see how everyone responded. We had 82% of you say my HOA needs better and more resident engagement. We had 5% say that your HOA is doing a great job already, and 13 saying my HOA doesn't do any resident engagement. So Julie, any comments about this?
Yeah, that says it all right there. And it's not unusual. You're looking at about 95% of the people, they need better engagement, and they don't do any resident engagement. So all of that, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, I'm not surprised, everyone. And so we're going to hopefully give you some tools and give your association some tools and some things to think about to make their communication better and to engage the residents. So go ahead, Hannah, let's just go forward.
All right.
There we go. So first of all, let's talk about engagement. So what does engagement mean? Well, the definition is to occupy, attract, or involve interest or attention, and participate or involve, or establish meaningful contact or connection. All of those, of course, according to Google, the great Google. as we say here, problems in the community associations are often made worse, as you well know, by poor communication techniques or no meaningful communication at all. And I think one of the worst parts is, and as you board members know that, and it's all you homeowners know, that if your community does not communicate with the residents, they're all left in the dark. And there's like this vacuum of information. And when there's an information vacuum, what happens? People fill it with just about anything. I mean, and typically negative, and it gets worse around cocktail time, right? So communities always want to communicate, and you really, frankly, can't communicate too much as long as you're communicating relevant information. Now, Hannah, let me ask you something here. Are we going to take any questions anytime someone wants to ask, or how are we going to do that?
Right, so during the next 2 polls that we have, we've got 2 more coming up, and we'll take questions then, and then also at the end during the Q&A. There's a specific...
Okay, so no immediate questions we're talking about.
Right.
I just wanted to see where everyone was going to be at on this. Okay, let's go ahead and advance the slide, and we can actually get to talk about it.
All right.
So why good communication drives engagement, and why is that? Well, because when people see that the board is communicating to them, they know what's going on in the community. So just even if they don't volunteer for anything, they're reading what's going on. That means they feel like there's a heartbeat and they feel a part of that heartbeat. So let's talk about good communication. On top right here, we talk about our communication in writing, and that means electronic writing as well. Though we do some hard communication, hard copy communication nowadays, so much of it is electronic. So just either way, folks. So in writing, good communication in writing. And when I talk about in writing, I mean notices, whether they're e-blasts or hard copy writing, but notices out to the membership, the streets are going to be paved on such and such a date, or newsletters, your regular newsletters that go out. And here's something I want everyone to think about. How many of your communities actually produce a newsletter, and how of them do it with any sort of regularity? I think most communities should have some sort of newsletter go out every month, with electronic or whatever, right? Every month or every other month. And I think a lot of people are going, wow, we get ours out quarterly, maybe. Consistency is everything on that. But anyway, you have to be able to communicate well in writing. Now, when we're talking about good communication as well, let's talk about email, especially for you board members out there and for your managers, if we have any managers listening as well. When you are communicating to your residents individually or as a whole through email, you always have to compose that, not just well, but you have to compose it for public consumption, even if it's just to one resident. And why is that? Because it could be for public consumption. So you can rest assured that if you send a resident an email, or 5 residents an email, or a bunch of them an email, or the whole community, that can end up somewhere else. That can end up on the neighborhood website. It could end up forwarded off to other association members. So always be mindful of how you are communicating in email. And one other thing, if you are doing email back and forth with a resident or multiple residents, I would advise you not to hit reply to all, because that is not your friend. Because when you have long email threads that go back and forth between you and several residents, sometimes, and that can go on for maybe weeks or months, well, sometimes at the very bottom of those, maybe something 4 months earlier, something was said, maybe about a person or about a situation that really should not be for everyone to be a part of. And it might have been unkind, and it could take you months to undo something inadvertent like that. So always compose for public consumption, and do not do reply to all. In fact, I would just do new email every single time, so you're never caught like that. Now, how we conduct ourselves at meetings, and we don't think about this very often, but how we conduct ourselves and conduct our meetings as a huge communication platform that goes from the board out to the residents. So if meetings are conducted well, if they are, they follow the agenda, they are concise, the board is polite to each other, they're polite back and forth with the residents, and the residents are polite, that speaks volumes into how well run your community is. And you know what? Where does everybody see you? If you're a board member, where does the community typically see you? At that board meeting, right? And if you have 3 or 4 or 5 hour board meetings that go on and on and on, or they're very contentious between board members, or they're very contentious between the board and maybe the homeowners who come in, there is nobody who wants to come serve on that board or even serve on a committee and be a part of that extremely difficult experience. I mean, all of you have experienced it somewhere along the line. I know you have. I have many times as a manager and as a board member. So that's where you get new board members, is when they see you in action. So if you're in action and your board meetings are good and they are appropriate time frame, in other words, under 2 hours, I would say most associations probably don't really need to ever meet any more than 1 hour. And I could feel all of you out there going, oh, I wish, but they should only be about an hour, 1 hour, that's it. But anyway, if you're 2 hours or less, you're doing pretty good. So when meetings are done well, you'll note almost the bottom bullet point, when they're done well, they promote the credibility and integrity of the board. That means the community can trust you. And they're thinking, wow, we are well run. This board is doing a really good job. It's very businesslike. Maybe I'll be on a committee. Or maybe I'm just happier about living here because I know that the community is in good hands. And you know what? When the community is in good hands, you typically have better resident engagement. Why? Bottom bullet point, people want to be a part of something positive. They do. They like to be a part of something larger than themselves. And if it's their community, that's great for you as other volunteers. There's new people to come in, new blood. And I don't know about you board members, but I don't want to be a board member forever. You know, it's funny when I do this talk or variations thereof live. Remember back when we could do things live? We could do them live. I would always ask people, board members, I'd say, how long have you been on the board? And I would start at 10 years. And out of, say 40 or 50 board members, I'd get probably 15 of them that have been, on a board for 10 years. And I say, okay, keep your hands up. And so there's 10 years, and I'll say, how about 15? And a few go down, and then 20, and then a few more go down, and then 30. And you still have 1 or 2 up there. I mean, my heavens, I think, are you a glutton for punishment? But most of the time, they just can't get other people to serve, and they don't mind serving as well. And it's actually good to have the community have new board members and new blood come in, because though the corporate memory is good, but it's nice to have that new perspective. So if you don't want to be a board member forever, and if you want to encourage good people to volunteer, you want to conduct concise, well-run meetings where people are kind to each other. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean they all agree, but that means we listen to the viewpoint and we move forward. So, okay, Hannah, go ahead. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so now let's talk about, this is written communication. I want to jump back to that for just a minute. So there are 3 principles to good written communication. And I think we all can have this refresher, especially if you don't spend a lot of your time writing. I spend a tremendous amount of my time writing. I have my online classes. I have 2 newsletters that go out every month. I do a lot of reports. I do expert witness work. So I spend a lot of time typing in front of a computer, right? But there are 3 principles to effective communication for every communication. And the first one is clarity. And that means the intent of your communication is clear. There is no confusion. And when that means you don't run off topic, right? So the intent is clear. You address the subject immediately in the first paragraph. You don't have 2 paragraphs of talking about, this is what's going on and this is what happened last week. And oh, by the way, here's something else. And then the intent of that original communication is lost down in paragraph 4. Why is that? Because people only read about 3 paragraphs and then they kind of, or if that, and then they kind of fade off. So you want to address it right away. You want to be very clear about what your communication is about regarding, streets are going to be closed XX weeks or XX days for resealing. When we'll be able to get back? You'll be able to get back this day. So very clear, no confusion. And your reasoning for all of these, to keep it clear, you always want to have the reasoning. What we're doing, meaning we're going to slurry the streets, for example. We're going to slurry the streets. When we're doing them, meaning when's it going to happen and when are we going to be able to get back on the streets and why are we doing it? Well, the reserve study calls for it. 3 points. Very clear. So the subject is the streets, then you have your 3 points of what, when, and why. Very clear, no ambiguity. The next one is brevity, meaning that it's short communication. I got that particular thing from, if you guys are in my age group, as I prefer classic, not old, classic, you remember this TV series MASH, right? Everyone remembers MASH? I loved MASH. But anyway, I remember Colonel Potter telling I think it was Klinger one time, and Klinger walks into him, and Colonel Potter said he's looking at a piece of paper, and he looks up at Klinger and he says, and Klinger tells him something or other, and he says, "Stop talking, be brief and be gone." And you know what? That's kind of what we want to do with our communication. We want to keep it as short as possible. So on top of clarity, meaning the intent is clear, it's what, when, where, and why, you want to be short about it. There are no irrelevant issues in your communication. Just like I said up there, no confusion, so no irrelevant issues. You want to just make it concise, make it short. Again, people don't read beyond a couple paragraphs, if that at times. And this applies to all of your communications. I mean, this would be something for a complicated issue or just a notice, or even for violation notices, your minutes, we'll talk about that in a second, memos, emails, brief and be gone. You know why? Because the more extraneous stuff you put in there, again, people's eyes glaze over, but then they have a tendency to not only get confused, but they'll pick these things apart, and all of a sudden the meaning of what you intended can get lost. So clarity, brevity. And let me talk a minute about minutes. Now, I actually write the minutes for one of the associations that I'm on the board on. Actually, I do it for both, right? And many associations, even to this day, are really confused about what should be in the minutes, or boards get bullied into putting things in the minutes by owners who are rather vociferous about what their problem is or what they're upset with the board about. What are minutes for? Minutes are to record the actions of the board. They are not for a whole bunch of discussion. I mean, you can say this item was discussed and points A, B, and C were brought up, but that's about it. And then it's motions approved and off we go. Minutes should be as brief as possible. Now I know, well, oh, I want this in the minutes and I want that in the minutes. Well, minutes aren't for that typically. So everyone, your minutes should be pretty short, unless your association is a large scale association that has a whole bunch of things on their agenda. Minutes should be typically no more than 2 pages. Sometimes even just one works for smaller associations. So let's go on to the next one. And the next thing, so we've got our nope, back up. Nope, she jumped the gun on me. The third one down is tone. So we have clarity, we have brevity, and now let's get to tone. The tone reflects the attitude of the writer. In this case, you're writing on behalf of the association. So it reflects the attitude of the association. And what is the tone you always want to have in all of your communications? You want to be professional. Even as a board, you're saying, wait a minute, I'm a volunteer. Professional? Yes, professional. Knowledgeable and reassuring. That means you want to come across like you know what's happening. It's very businesslike. You know the what, when, where, and why. And you always want to tell them the board is, not the board is looking out for you. Well, you may, it depends on what it is. But you want them to come away with the feeling that they are in good hands. So professional, knowledgeable, and reassuring. Clarity, brevity, and tone. Okay, now Hannah, we can go. Okay, let's talk about letters and notices. So our challenge in the industry is to, one of the biggest ones we have is to effectively communicate complicated concepts or subjects in writing. And making this worse, as you guys all well know, a lot of what we do is negative or perceived as negative by the owners. So that would be things we're telling them they need to comply. They need to, you know, you got to take these pots off your back porch, or gosh, we're going to go into construction defect litigation, or we're being sued by somebody else, or something like that. Or everyone's favorite, assessment increases. So even though overall these are really, well, not the litigation, but assessment increases are actually a positive for the association, because you know you need the revenue, things cost more, things have to go up, right? But that's perceived as negative by the owners out there, right? Especially since so many of them don't keep track of what is going on, or don't know what the cost of your contracts are. They don't know how things have gone up. They just don't necessarily think about it, right? So what we put out is often so negative that we have to be really, really careful to keep the tone correct, especially on negative things. Again, compliance, litigation, assessment increase, special assessments, even more so. And the reason I say this is because we always want to keep in mind, last bullet point here, the emotional impact that negative communication will have on the recipients, negative or perceived negative communication. So here's how we do that. Go ahead, Hannah. Thank you. Here's how we do that. So we're trying to mitigate the emotional negative impact, right? So the first thing you want to do, if you're writing it, or if you're reading something that maybe if you have a community manager, if that manager has written it, or another board member, the first thing you want to do is look at that and put yourself in the recipient's shoes. Now, if you're a board member, I know you're a recipient anyway, and you have to pay that assessment increase as well, but you know it's coming. So put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel if you received a notice of special assessment that you had absolutely no idea it was coming? I mean, you haven't paid attention, and all of a sudden, boom, you get the special assessment of $4,000. Maybe things need to be re-roofed, right? Holy moly, I don't have $4,000. What am I going to do? So what you want to do as a board member or anyone putting out this type of communication is to lessen the feelings of anger or distress or having been blindsided by having that reassuring tone. That means the letter or the notice is knowledgeable in the sense that it says it tells everything that needs to be known about this particular issue. We have to have these re-roofed. Let's just say our clubhouse needs to be re-roofed. We had a roof inspector come out. His name was such and such, and he inspected it. This was his report. We have X amount of dollars in reserves. Unfortunately, it's not going to be enough. This is why we are going to have to special assess the members. And then you want to be empathetic. So that's the knowledgeable part, right? And then within this type of communication, you want to be empathetic. And within that communication, you want to say things like, the board understands that this may put a hardship. So to mitigate that hardship for some of our residents, we please ask that if you need to be placed on a payment program, to reach out to our community manager or board member X or however you are going to function that. So we understand this is a hardship. We understand this is a blind side. And the second thing is third thing is you always want to be sincere in that communication. I mean, you don't want to be flippant. You want to understand that this could be a hardship. You want to understand that a lot of people are blindsided, so you want to communicate that as well. That's a part of your tone as well. And always have the right information. The phone numbers to call, maybe it's the manager or the email address of the manager or the board member dealing with this particular issue. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us or contact me at. That's the right information. So there is nothing hidden. You always want to be as transparent as you possibly can be when you are communicating these types of issues. So what you want to end up with, as our bottom bullet point says, the owner, the person receiving that negative communication, may be unhappy with the information, but they walk away feeling the community is in good hands and well managed by the board. Why? Because you gave them all the information they needed. You were knowledgeable within that communication. You were empathetic. You were sincere with your empathy, and the communication had all the right information. It was very transparent. All of the information is out there. So there's just no question left in that person's mind. Again, this all goes to credibility and integrity of the board. And by the way, that's really all we have in this industry. Okay, Hannah, you can go to the next one.
All right, so we've got another poll. And again, so this poll, we will be answering some questions. And if you would like to say something aloud, please use the raise your hand feature and we will allow you to talk. So Julie, you're welcome to pull up the Q&As here as well with me.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's see. So we've got one here. Can you type your email to request links to previous ones, such as managing small? Oh, that's
for you.
That's for me. Okay, we have a private group Facebook page. Have you used this type of medium? What do you think of this as communication?
Well, when you're asking, let me ask the questioner. Is this is private, meaning only the association or its representative can get on there and comment and put items up?
It doesn't say, but I'm assuming that the private group on Facebook is specifically just, okay, she said yes, okay.
Okay, so you said yes. As long as it's private, I don't really have a problem with it, but as long as all the residents within the community know that Facebook page address. So if you're using that as your main communication tool and you keep it updated, and other people, meaning residents and that type of thing, can't get on there. Well, if they can get on there and ask questions, that's one thing. But when people start getting on there and putting up negative stuff about the community, someone in the community, one of the board members, needs to ride herd on that and not allow the negative or nasty stuff to go up there. So if it's private, you keep it updated and everybody knows about it. It's a relatively useful tool. Yeah, social media is, I mean, some people even use Twitter to get that kind of stuff out. So social media, it's everywhere, it's free. And if that's open to you and it's well managed, I don't really have a problem with it.
Okay. We'll take one more Q&A in the chat feed or Q&A feature, and then we've got some people raising their hands. So let me get this one out there. So Julie, you talked about the minutes and them being simple. Yeah. And so should residents be, names be used in those minutes?
You mean if you're talking about board members, doesn't have to be. It can just be, it can just be passed or approved, or back in the old days, we used to use their last name as the motion made, someone else's last name as second. You don't really have to. It's just motion approved, period. Okay, and in their question, it had said residents in particular. Is there any difference for that? If for whatever reason a resident's name gets brought up, does that? It depends on what it is. That it might be relevant, then again, it might not be. And I want to caution, this doesn't have to do with things taking place in executive session, so, or even if you're noting an executive session, if it's someone who's in arrears, you don't typically want to put their name in there. That's not a good thing. I would say legal counsel would tell you no on that. But only if it's something that's relevant to what is going on. So if resident, if Bob raises his hand in the middle of a board meeting and the board lets it, and he says something or he asks something, you don't need to note his name in there. In fact, you don't even need to note that he asked something within the meeting. You can, but I tell you, once you start allowing that thing, it's usually just it's a downhill slide to having 15 different comments in there that don't need to be done. And once again, that keeps your communication and your minutes, though they are your corporate record. Everybody has to post their minutes in California pretty much, right? So that's your communication to the membership. You don't want it to look all full of gobbledygook and the meaning of the minutes get lost. The meaning is the actions taken by the board. All right. Thank you for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and allow it, Dana. Okay, you are unmuted, and I saw that you raised your hand.
Yes, I had a question in regards to the issue around a Facebook page. What, if anything, can the association do or the board do if a community member on their own, without prior approval, creates a Facebook page that is representing, quote unquote, representing the community? We don't have any control what's posted there, obviously. They don't keep it up. The relevant information that we post on our website, send out newsletters, etc., is not necessarily reflected on that Facebook page. So do we have any power to eliminate that, to determine what's posted on it, etc.?
Well, two things. Let me ask a question, Dana. Are they using your community name as if it's your official community website or community Facebook page?
Yes.
Yes. I would venture to say that I would talk to my legal counsel about that, because if they are purporting to be the community, that may be something that is actionable, and I don't mean lawsuit actionable necessarily. I mean actionable in the sense that they may be able to send a letter and say you need to cease and desist, that kind of thing. So I'm going to refer you to counsel on that. But as the board, whatever communication you send out to your owners, I think for the time being, I would always place somewhere in there a disclaimer saying this Facebook page is not put forth by the community association, it is not maintained by the community association, and is not our official a Facebook page. So you need to keep getting that out, but I would refer you to counsel. Sorry, that's terrible. Yeah. It's not unusual though, happens a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll take one more aloud. Karen, you are unmuted. Karen? Anything?
Nope, she's muted.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you on, Karen.
Okay, great. This is a great conversation. Our community, I live in Cameron Grove, a senior community. They do a great job. They do the very best they can. Your discussion of minutes is so wonderful because it's always been my position that they should be as brief as possible. In your opinion, do you agree that perhaps in standard operating procedures, there should be a definitive outline as to what should be covered in minutes and what shouldn't?
You know, there's several industry resources regarding that, and I'm sure that Echo can send you to some of those. You must have some, Dave. Unmute yourself, Dave.
I gotta unmute
Resources,
myself.
you have resources regarding minutes? I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yes, sure. We have lots of articles and other information. So yeah, we'd be happy to help.
Yes, yes. And so from there, what I would say is that look at the resources that Echo has provided you, and they'll be able to tell you where that is, probably posted online. And then from there, I think the board should definitely set, I mean, if this is a problem, and especially if you're taking your own minutes, which many communities do, even if they're managed professionally now, but they still take their own minutes. And, you know, if you have that kind of policy and you make sure everybody gets a copy of it every year, added to the minutes, that will keep it consistent, and it will also keep you guys out of hot water. You just want to make them as brief as you possibly can. A lot of discussion. So don't forget, in any kind of lawsuit, minutes are discoverable. And so things may have been said and things written down, or things written down inaccurately and then inadvertently approved. And if somebody sues you, they're going to get a look at that, and it's just enough enough rope to hang yourself sometimes. So yes, minutes short. In fact, it's item, motion, approved, done.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The last thing we will do in this, and before we move on to the next slide, is actually get your feedback really quick on this poll. So Julie mentioned this question earlier, but we weren't able to get an answer from the group as a whole. So do you have a newsletter that goes out at least quarterly? Give you guys just a few more seconds. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Okay, I'm going to share these results. So we had 53% of you saying yes, and 45% saying no, and 2% that said I don't know. Julie, any comments?
Well, actually, I'm gratified to see that most people have one going out quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a small, a little bit more than the people who don't have it, but I think that's really great. And a few people don't know, so I don't know if they're not plugged in, or maybe they don't have email. It only goes out email. I don't know. But newsletters are, I mean, could be electronic, e-blasts or whatever you're doing, but they're incredibly important. So let's move to the next slide, Hannah.
Sounds good.
We can talk about newsletters. So if your community has a newsletter, or you need to develop a newsletter for your community, or you think it needs to be done, here are some tips about doing newsletters. Number one, you have to understand what the goal of the newsletter is. The goal is to be helpful and informational and project a positive image of the community. And that means of the board and the community. And that means you need to have a positive image to project. So you always want to impart also relative and pertinent information. I mean, stuff that applies to what's going on right now, whether it's a social committee or a new event coming up, or, again, clubhouse is going to be under repair, or something else is going on in the streets, or the trees are going to be trimmed, or the palm trees are going to get trimmed next month, and this is the phases it's going in. All of that is pertinent information. And why do you want pertinent information? It tells the community that the board is in tune with the needs of the community. And the board's not off there, in la la land somewhere. And typically what happens when newsletters start to go awry, it's because, and I know this is an issue because not everybody likes to write newsletters, and it takes a while to do so, and you got to have a volunteer willing to do it, or you have to pay someone to do it, right? So there's always these challenges. But you always want to tell the community that the board is in tune with their needs, right? You don't want to think that the board doesn't know what's going on. And this is a part of this great communication, this overall strategy. Good communication in violations, good communication in notices, and for the regular, everyday information, it goes out in newsletters. And the board always, not only do you want to project being in tune, you want to be in tune with what's going on. And then the next thing, of course, is to publish regularly. I'm really happy to see so many people are getting a newsletter at least quarterly. Excuse me. That's really fantastic. And why is that? Why does it need to be regular? Because it promotes and projects openness and transparency. So when communication comes out regularly, and even let's say you guys have a newsletter that goes out monthly, and 1 month you just can't get it out, and then sometimes one turns into 2, and then maybe you'll get it out in 4 months. When people can't rely on regular communication from you, again, what does that do? That's an information vacuum. And when there's an information vacuum in the community, people will fill that with all kinds of things. You know, they won't know what's going on. And well, I don't know why this isn't getting done. And I don't know why that's not getting done. And this board must be terrible. You know, that's just how it goes. Y'all know it. You live it, right? I live it myself. It's kind of funny. But anyway, this is why you want to publish regularly. And whether it's quarterly, whether it's monthly, whatever it is, try not to miss those. It's really important. And next, and this is really, really important, resist being the no police. And, you know, unfortunately for us in the business, whether you're in management or whether you're on a board, you're always having to tell people, don't do this, don't do that, don't park there, pick up after your dog. You know, you can't change the paint color of your home unless you get an ACC and blah, blah, blah. We're always trying to tell people no. So think of this. You want to encourage compliance and not scold for non-compliance in this type of newsletter forum. So you want to encourage people to do the right thing. Just remember, folks, what are you doing? You're herding the cats. If you keep pushing forward and pushing the cats in those directions, if you have 100 cats and 50 of them go in the right direction, that's pretty good. So you just got to keep that part in mind. So let's look. Go ahead, Hannah. Do the next one up. I did a couple of samples here of, I'm going to move my things over here, of newsletters for you guys. Now, if you'll look on the example on the left, this is a part of being the no police. And I'm just going to read it just for fun and how I always think this sounds to somebody's ears. Again, this is remember the emotional impact of your communication. So example 1, and see we have the dog here with the line and the red line through him and that. So here's how it reads. Reminder, clean up after your pets. The board of directors reminds everyone to clean up after their dogs. We have had many complaints about dog excrement in the playground as well as on the walking trail from the playground to the clubhouse. Not picking your dog up after your dog is in violation of the rules and regulations of the Happy Acres Homeowners Association and can result in the dog owner being fined up to $100 per violation. To avoid a fine, clean up after your dog. Well, that was certainly pleasant to receive, wasn't it? I don't think so. Look over to example 2 for a nice way to say the same thing, but in a completely different tone. So example number 2, good news for dogs and the people they own. For the convenience of our dogs and the residents they own, the association has installed 3 convenient pet waste stations along the walking trail from the clubhouse to the playground and 1 near the playground area itself. These stations contain bags for waste and also have a can for disposal of that waste, making all that walking and socializing more pleasant for everyone. Dogs and residents love exercising in these areas, and now they can do so free from accidents. Thank you all in advance for using our new waste stations. Happy walking. Same message, completely different tone being put out with that. So understand this. On the left-hand side, you're being the no police. On the right-hand side, you are encouraging people to do the right things, and you are showing that the board is in tune with the needs of the residents and the dogs by the board recognizing that we needed to install pet waste stations. So not only have you encouraged people to do the right thing, you've assisted them in doing the right thing. The right tone, the right information, and the board is in tune. It makes the board incredibly credible and gives the board and goes to their integrity. They see what needs to be done and they do it. Okay, Hannah, next one. Okay, let's talk about composing and responding to email. Again, write as if for public consumption. Clarity, brevity, tone, we went across that, but this is the most important here. For all you board members and anyone who's in management out there, never ever hop the crazy email train. Now, you know what that is. That is when you get an email from an owner or from dozens of owners in the from column, and probably a whole bunch of others in the CC column or the blind copy column, that is full of all kinds of things, you know, innuendo, rumor, accusations, and typically they're not, they have bad tone, they're definitely never brief, right? And they're very confusing, but they're usually full of all kinds of misinformation, right? And the natural thing for many of us to want to do, especially, you know, board members, you guys, you get paid so well for this job, right? So you're doing this all as volunteers. You spend hours and hours. People have no idea what you do. And all of a sudden you've got this group personally attacking you and the community for things that they don't even know anything about. And the first thing we often want to do is jump in there and set the record straight. Don't do it. With very few exceptions, there is absolutely no winning for you if you hop that crazy train. If you board the crazy train, there is absolutely no winning for you. Why? Because if you are answering these people and you're trying to go through everything that's, this isn't right, and this isn't right, and here's what we're doing, and you're going to spend not only a whole bunch of time, but whatever you send out to that even if you do it to one person, believe me, that's going to go to others, maybe to dozens or even hundreds, depending on the size of your community. And you are opening that communication up to be cut and paste, edited, completely changed altogether, and you will have no control over that. So things just get worse. So I would encourage all you board members out there to think about setting a policy about these gang emails that come into the board or management. And in fact, if you're in management, you work for a management company, I would encourage them all to have some sort of policy with regard to their manager, the actual manager, answering the crazy emails. A few board members, I mean, there's really almost no winning for you on that. And so if people are doing these kind of things, you're saying, well, should we just ignore it? Well, it depends. Maybe you should ignore it. But on the other hand, some issues may need to be addressed. But what I would encourage you to do is not answer those specific emails, but address those issues in either a letter email to all of the residents saying, this has come to our attention that are certain people in the community think X, X, and X. We'd like to take a few moments to answer them all. And if you do it, you can do it email, you can do it hard copy, but that way you are giving the information out there for everyone to see directly from the board. And so that means you're not getting caught back and forth in this tit for tat, which can go, as you know, because you've probably gotten involved in one, can go on forever. So there is no winning for you, with very little exception, for hopping the crazy email train. Okay, Hannah, let's go. And again, pro tip, I want you to set communication policy. I really think all boards should have some sort of policy with regard to their communication. So, and it's going to have to address where and or who all the communication is funneled through. If you have a management company, typically communication should funnel through the management company and then be disseminated as is appropriate or given to the board as a whole, however you set your policy that way. If you are self-managed and you have e-communication or even regular snail mail communication, what board member should that go to? We always try to want to keep it one person, because then everything has a tendency to stay in a nice, neat package, if you will. So everything is recorded and brought into the community in a orderly fashion, because especially if the larger the community is, you know how that is. It can just be insane. When you do this, you will have a tendency, or your community will have a tendency, to keep communication flowing. It doesn't get bottled up. So if communication goes to all the board members get it, yet none of the board members answer it because we didn't decide what board member was going to answer it, that doesn't work, because then all of a sudden people are saying, whoa, the board is being not communicative. Oh, what's going on? Something must be terrible. We need a new board, or management must be fired, whatever it is. You know how it is. It's crazy stuff. Again, what does that do? That gives us a communication vacuum. And when there's a vacuum, stuff falls in there that grows exponentially around cocktail time. So you want to keep your communication flowing, because that is the hallmark of a well-run association. And having a clear policy on who it funnels through and how the communication is processed or answered in the beginning. That's like the top thing you want to do. What does it do? It promotes consistency in communication, in answering the communication and receiving the communication. What does that do again? It promotes board credibility and board integrity. Hannah? And another one.
Yes, we've got one more. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to get a few questions from our Q&A feature. Let's see, we've got one. Our HOA is 55 plus. What do you suggest we do to move an association away from paper and hard copy and into an electric form for communication?
Well, since 55 is way in my rearview mirror, I will tell you, I think that even our senior citizens, our senior members, everybody is pretty much well versed in email. And they may not have a PC at home, but almost everybody has a tablet. So I would encourage the board, you know, and you want to go green, right, too. Also, it's a much better way to communicate quickly. And I think most people would probably prefer to receive things electronically, but you can start out, if you're not sure about that, you actually can start out by taking a survey. And if it has to be a paper survey, you got to do a paper survey. And then you can ask people, would they prefer to receive it electronically? And if so, what's your email address? And then you just keep track. The association I'm on a board on, it's 240 units or something like that. And we have, out of all those units, we have like 10 people that receive all the notices by hard copy, mail, US mail, right? But everybody else says, I had opted into it years ago, but we still do that for some, as we're supposed to, for some of those residents. So I think take a survey, take it, obviously, if you're not all on electronic, you need to take it hard copy and get people's feedback. And whatever they say, you don't necessarily have to follow it. If they say, oh, we have email, but we want to receive it this way, you're thinking, well, we're going to try to slowly move it in that direction. The people who wanted email, give it to them email. But I think saying that we have a over 55 community that maybe, you know, people are in their 70s. Well, I mean, I have to tell you, my husband is 70 and he taught himself code. So it can be done. Not that you all have to do that, but I just think today's 70 or 75 is not the 75 of 10 years ago. And if anyone's been in the workforce over the last 10 or even 15 years, they for sure somewhere in their house have an iPad or one of these, a smartphone. So take a survey, see how that works for you.
Okay. We've got lots of questions about the minutes. Do you recommend
Go ahead.
Do you recommend a portal on the HOA site for ongoing communication? Julie?
Yeah, sure. If you have the capability, absolutely. That's fantastic. Just make sure all your owners know the portal and they know how they have to access their sign-in, because almost everybody has their own sign-in, right? So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Many management companies provide that already because they provide that as part of their service. They provide you a website with a portal. But yes, absolutely.
Okay. How do you keep board meetings concise without having to continually postpone important agenda items to future meetings?
You know what? We are going to talk about that in a minute.
Great.
But I'll answer it right part of it now. So the next little couple of slides have to do with conducting better board meetings. So read that one more time to me, Hannah, and say it for everybody again. Go ahead.
Let me go back to it.
Sorry.
How do you keep board meetings concise without having to continually postpone important agenda items to future meetings?
You know, if you are having to postpone agenda items to future meetings, typically that means that the board is not being provided enough information in the meeting to make a decision. So I want to tell everyone here, and I know many of your eyeballs will get very big, but when a motion is made and then it's seconded so the item can be discussed, if you can't make a decision in 3 to 5 minutes on what to do, then you don't have enough information. If you have to table it, you don't have enough information. So determine what the information is that you need. If you are self-managed, whoever is handling that particular issue, maybe it's the treasurer, maybe it's the secretary, maybe it's a committee member, you need to give them their marching orders. This is the information we need to make a decision, and you put it on them, and then you have to hold them accountable for that. If it's a management company and they're not providing you enough of the information, then you need to hold them accountable. Okay, you need to come back with X, X, and X. Maybe we need a copy of the insurance, maybe whatever it is. You know, maybe we need references, whatever. But that's it. And listen, one of the big issues that happens in board meetings when people wander off the agenda is that you know, you always have that one person in the meeting who wants to hijack the meeting and use it to talk to people and talk about what they did back in the day. And, well, I used to be in development. I drove by a condominium once, you know, and they just go on and on and on. And I want to tell all you board members out there, it doesn't necessarily have to be the chair, but all of you board members can be held accountable for keeping the meeting rolling. And what do you do if the chair's not doing it? Point of order, chair. We want to get back on the agenda. And don't be bullied by that person who wants to keep talking. Say, no, we stick to the agenda. When you start wandering off in the weeds, talk about a great way to lose your credibility as a board if you can't even conduct meetings that way. So if you're not making if you are not making a decision in 3 to 5 minutes, you don't have enough information, get the information or assign getting that information and hold that person accountable.
All right, so kind of launching off of that, I'm going to go ahead and our last poll, and I saw one person raise their hand, and we'll actually get to that raise hand during the Q&A. Let's finish our poll, and we'll get through the next few slides, and then we'll take even more questions and comments.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this is the poll. We'd love to get your feedback. Do you have board meetings that are regularly over 2 hours? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. I hope we got as many responses as we could. Okay, here are the results, everyone. 34% said yes, 65% said no, and 2% said I don't know.
Well, I want to say fantastic for that 65%.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fantastic. And normally it's completely flipped. Usually it's the yes, and then it's the no. So that's great. You guys are all doing something really, really great. Really great. I will tell you, the longest board meeting I ever sat in was 3 days. 3 days.
Wow.
Adjourn, come back, adjourn, come back. It was, I was the manager. It was the most stressful meeting I'd ever been in my life. It was, yeah, anyway. So.
Wow, I'm going to have
Lucky
for
stars.
that one. Okay, well, let's go on and move on with the content.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, let's go back to talk about the board meetings. And I touched on this. Let me move my pictures over here a little bit. I touched on this a little while ago, but how board meetings are conducted communicates loudly to the membership, positively or negatively. I mean, I would say the board meeting is the body language of the community, if you understand what I mean. So, and it's where because it's where everyone sees you in action. So good board meetings are good communication to the community. And how do we do it? Just as we talked about, we stay on the agenda. And if somebody brings up a new business item, meaning a board member, not a person in the audience, but a board member says, oh, we need to talk about X. Unless you can make a decision right there, what happens? You say, we will make a note, and that will go under new business for the next meeting. So you don't just start talking about something right there that you're not going to be able to make a decision on. So stay on the agenda, stay out of the weeds. You're not in the weeds department. You're on the big picture department here. The next thing is don't enable the pontificators, and that's just what I was talking about. It's the one person usually who always hijacks the meeting. And if you are watching this with a few other board members, don't look at that person. But if it's you, someone else should nudge that person. So don't enable that. You don't need to enable it. Help the chair keep the meeting control. If you are the chair, do your best to keep that under control. Point of order, we're going to go back to the agenda and stay on the agenda. Go ahead to the next one, Hannah, please. Always be prepared to make decisions. You know, another reason that things keep getting rolled over, not just because you don't have enough information, is because oftentimes when you have to make a big decision, or spend a lot of money maybe, or terminate a contract or whatever it is, there are a lot of people that just feel, oh, I don't want to do that because I'm going to get hung to dry by the membership or whatever. You know, if you're on the board, you're a trustee, then you're a fiduciary. And this is your job to make these decisions on behalf of the corporation. If this isn't something you're comfortable with, you probably should not be on the board. You must be prepared to make decisions. And unfortunately, decisions always have consequences. Some good, some bad. The decision is good, but the consequences may be not good because it was a special assessment that you know that you're obligated to send to the membership. So Just be prepared to do it. And remember to always be big picture. So as I said, you don't want to be in the weeds. You want to be big picture. Boards have a tendency to get into their comfort zone and think, well, we need to manage, how the petunias are planted. No, you just need to say petunias need to be planted and they need to live and they need to be planted in these places. That's where you are. You're in the big picture department. You're not in the down in the weeds planting the petunias department. I think what's the saying is that, you can't be up on deck watching for icebergs if you're down working on the number 9 piston down in the shaft. So you got to remember, big picture. You want to see the iceberg coming, or you want to see what else is going on out in the community. Always be polite and be cordial with each other. And, it's like if you want to have a relationship forever with your family, a lot of times you don't agree. You may not agree on politics. You may not agree on all kinds of stuff, but you love your family and you want to still have a cordial relationship with them. So you always try to maintain that with other board members. Sometimes it's even impossible, and you might have to do it through gritted teeth, but try to be cordial with each other and with your audience, meaning the homeowners, maybe during the homeowner forum. Even if they're not so cordial, you always maintain that professional veneer, cordiality with them. And going along with that, when the vote is over, when you've taken a vote on whatever the issue is, and you may disagree on it there, but when you walk out of the meeting, you need to speak with one voice. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you had to agree with how the vote was taken. But once it is taken, you have to move forward. That's how boards operate. No walking around the community and telling people, well, I didn't really agree with that, and I didn't think we should do that, and don't want to do that. Why? It completely blows the credibility of the board. So if someone says to you, you're the board member who you're the board member who voted no on whatever the issue was, right? And it's maybe not that popular an issue. People will come up to you and say, well, why didn't you say more? Why didn't you do more? Aren't we going to do this? Are you going to bring it up again? And you just have to say, I didn't agree with it, but we've decided to do it and we're moving forward. And that's what you should do. That's what you should do. It's okay to disagree. If everyone's in agreement, if everyone's thinking the same, someone's not thinking, right? I think that's George Patton, right? But once a decision is made, move forward with one voice. Just think about if you're a parent or have been a parent, and when the kids wanted something, they come to mom and they're like, Mom, can we do this? And mom's like, no. They're like, okay. Then they run and ask Dad, can we do that? Yeah, sure. And then off they go, So what does that do to the parents? You got to have this united front, because if any flaw in your armor, especially in a contentious community, will be exploited by those who want to destroy the board or get rid of board members or just create havoc, right? So speak with one voice once the decision is made. And always remember, if meetings are unnecessarily long or unpleasant, no one wants to sign up for that unhappy event. So if you don't want to be on the board forever, try and run your board meetings accordingly. Short as possible, as cordial as possible, be ready to make decisions, take the vote, and once the vote is taken, speak with one voice. Gives you incredible integrity and credibility. Okay, Hannah, next one. And now we have more Q&A.
Yes, and we've got tons of questions.
Okay.
So, all right. Let's see. I'm actually going to go to, I know Jane had actually raised her hand during our last poll. So Jane, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, Jane. Oh, wait. Unmute. Unmute. Okay. I will come back to you.
Oh, she's unmuted now.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay, Jane.
When a board promotes always voting with the majority, what do you have to say about that?
You are referring to, let's just say there's a 5-member board and 3 members are going to for sure vote yes, and they encourage the other 2 to vote yes. Is that what you are referring to?
Exactly. When the board is annoyed if someone does not agree with their vote.
I think you have to vote the way you think is correct. So if that person wants to vote no, vote no. But once the decision is made, you do need to move forward And as I said previously, speak with one voice. You just have to move forward. You can say, I disagreed, but here we go.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Jane, for your question. Okay, let's take a few that were typed in. All right. So we've got 54 questions in here, so we will do our best to get as many of these answered. How do you prevent a situation where most major decision making is done by the board president, not because the board president wants it that way, but because no one else wants to step up?
Well, I would say, if you mean step up to take the vote, is that what you're referring? Well, let me just go ahead. If you're referring to no one wants to step up, no one wants to take the responsibility to make the decision, but I'm going to assume that the decisions are made in a board meeting because that is what would be legal and appropriate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have, just use a 5-member board again, just for simplicity. So you have one person who's very strong and very comfortable in making decisions. And then you have 4 people who aren't typically that strong. And so that one member, in this case, the board president, you kind of end up being the person who drives the ship. My advice to you would be try and look for other people to become committee members and then maybe board members at a later date who maybe are more comfortable with making decisions. That's about the best I can tell you. But if you're the one who has to make them and you're making them within a board meeting and people are voting, I mean, unfortunately, at the moment, that's your lot in life. But look for others who may be able to make those decisions with you in the future.
Thank you. So any tips for encouraging board members to be prepared, or how to be better prepared for the board meetings?
Again, 2 things. If you're a self-managed association, then that's a little more difficult. Let me first talk to the ones who are professionally managed associations. You should be receiving a board packet from your manager. I would say 5 days, but I think 3 days is more like it nowadays. That has all the information that is appropriate for you for this meeting. If you are not receiving that on time, or you're not receiving enough information, you need to make your manager aware of it and potentially their supervisor aware of it. But here's the big kicker, folks. Read your board packet ahead of time. Don't be walking into the meeting, opening up your board packet, 5 seconds before you walk in, because you need to absorb the information. Also, if you read it ahead of time, you may very well be able to ask questions of your manager and get those answers before you walk into a board meeting. Again, making the meeting more concise. Now, if you are self-managed, there has to be someone who all the information funnels through, and the person who prepares the agenda, typically, not always, but typically, that is the board president. So that person has to be the keeper of the record and the keeper of what's going on from meeting to meeting. All the information needs to be obtained. It needs to be put in some form of board information packet. May not be exactly like you would if you had a manager, but all that information needs to be in there, and it needs to be distributed to the rest of the board members ahead of time, just like with a management company. So those other board members can ask questions of other board members, the board president, or if a committee has prepared a report, let's say you have a landscape committee that says we need to replace, these old plantings in, all on Happy Lane needs to be done, and we're going to spend X amount of dollars, and you're the board member, I have a question about that. So I'll be able to pick up the phone and talk to my landscape committee chair and say, can you tell me a little more about that? So someone needs to be the keeper of the information. Someone needs to be the keeper of the agenda. That's typically the board president, keeper of the agenda from meeting to meeting. So we know what's old business, we know what's going to be new business, we know what needs to be crossed off the agenda, and we know what information needs to come so we can make a decision on each one of those agenda items. And the board members need to get it in time so they don't have to ask all those questions at the meeting that now goes on 3.5 hours, where it really should only be an hour and a half.
Great, thank you. Very clear. Next question, I got this in my email actually. Would you agree that items included for the minutes should be pre-agreed upon to limit discussions and keep the overview on track?
Not, well, maybe, but I wouldn't put it that way. I think the items in the minutes are what the items on the agenda. So the agenda needs to be adhered to. Thus, the minutes follow the agenda. So I think we're sort of saying the same thing, but if it's old business and you know it's old business, and because we already had it on the agenda, but we didn't get to it, let's just say we tabled it due to lack of time, and that has to do with the new swimming pool contract, and you have to make a decision there. That's what drives the minutes. So there has to be the information on the agenda, the appropriate amount of information on the agenda. The board needs to read the board packet or board information ahead of time, get their questions answered, and a decision gets made. Now, here's something I will tell you. Everyone remember, the items on the agenda, the pool contract renewal or new pool contract is on the agenda. Someone makes a motion, someone makes a second, and then it gets to be discussed. So don't start discussing it ahead of time. So once we're there, we're ready for action or not. Make a motion, then second it, then you talk about it, and you then take the vote, call the question, as we used to call it. Then you take the vote. If everyone doesn't have enough information, they'll just vote it down, and then it goes back on the agenda again. And thus, it gets put in the minutes.
Okay. Julie, we got this question actually in our last webinar. Maybe you can help expand on it, but if there's residents that speak another language other than English and the board, there's no one on the board that speaks that language. Have you dealt with that or have experienced that in any way and potential solutions?
Personally have not. I do know that happens, and it's actually quite common, especially there on the West Coast and in the Bay Area, very common. And I live outside of the Seattle area, but it's very common there as well, but I never managed up here. You know, I'm going to have to tell you, this is something I don't know, and I don't know if you're obligated to provide that information in another language. Do you know that, David? You're muted, David.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, let me answer that. I don't think you're obligated, but I think you're on a really slippery slope if you don't address it. You should try to provide what's known as a reasonable accommodation for the member to communicate to the board. I don't think it's an obligation at this point. I can see that being a problem down the road. What I would do, I think, is if they don't speak and you want to communicate with them, you either let them know to bring somebody in that speaks English or whatever the language is that the board's meeting's in, and make sure that you do accommodate them, or at least try to accommodate them. Mm-hmm. You could ask for their comments in writing beforehand. That's a good way to do it. But to reach out, I mean, especially in our current situation in the world, it's a good idea to try to be as accommodating as possible.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I do think, especially in probably up and down the West Coast here, that's probably going to be law, California first, yeah, but it's going to just fall out everywhere else because that's usually how it happens. I think that if you can, you know, you can probably get someone to interpret online, right? And I mean interpret things in writing, right? And they'd be able to send back, and at a probably relatively reasonable cost. So I think if you have, let's just say, for example, you have a large Cambodian community, Hmong or something like that, you can probably hire someone at a very reasonable rate to do this online, is to get the things written in is that Hmong, or is it Hmong is the, excuse me, I'm going to show my complete ignorance here.
It's in their language, whatever it's called, right?
Whatever the language is, to speak their language, you can probably get that done at a reasonable rate. And I will tell you, I think that's being proactive, and don't forget, that's good communication. They are community members, and you want them a part of your community, and you want to be viewed positively. And to me, that's a very, very positive thing for a board to do.
Yeah, and there are technologies out there now that can give you real-time translations. Mm-hmm. So you might want to look into that, and they're free. And so that would be a reasonable accommodation in my book. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great, thank you guys. I'm going to go ahead and take a question that was a hand raised. Elaine, I hope you're there. Okay, let's see. Go ahead and unmute you. Probably going to take, there we go. Elaine, are you there? You are unmuted now, so if you're there, we'd love to hear your question. Okay. Looks like Elaine may have stepped away. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute. Okay, we've got another one. Okay, Marcel, I think. I'm Forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, but we'll go ahead and unmute you. Okay.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay. I saw this in the Q&A, but I didn't hear it addressed. Our management company communicates only to owners, and when there is something like a fire alarm inspection, the manager assumes that it is the owner's responsibility to let the tenant know that there's a fire alarm inspection and they have to be at home. What is the appropriate way to deal with tenants who do not get the notice?
That's interesting because I think as an industry, we moved kind of away from that thinking. I mean, I know it still happens, but as an industry, we like to bring everybody in. We used to think, oh no, we only deal with the homeowners, it's their responsibility. But the truth is, especially there's many, many, many long-term tenants, they're a part of your community. And I know in the association, the larger one that I'm a board member on, we try to get everybody's email address if the resident meaning the resident tenant wants to be on our mailing list. And we try to get everybody's because we send them just about everything we send the homeowners because they need that information. So I know there's, especially the startup is a little bit to manage for your manager. I don't know if they're in-house or on-site or portfolio manager with the management company. But I think we're kind of more going to bringing everyone in the process and communicating well, because they are members of your community. I mean, it's, the owners may get the notice, but they may live across the country or in another country.
Yeah,
and it may take a long time for them to answer that.
So Julie, let me chime in here a little bit, because think of it this way. The board's responsibility is to be the fiduciary of the corporation, right? And so one of their primary jobs is to minimize risk to the association. So if you had a fire and this person was a renter and didn't know about the protocols, procedures, whatever, who's at fault if something happens to that person?
Mm-hmm.
The community is, because you didn't notice them. And I would hate to go to court and have to explain to the judge that that person had a problem, died, whatever, because we didn't give it to him, but we weren't responsible to give him that notification.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to the people in residence, have a procedure to make it work so that they get information that's necessary.
Especially for life safety issues. I mean, that's like, it's absolutely critical on those type of things. I would say, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV, is that the association probably is only legally obligated to deal with the owners. But I just think even if it's not a life safety issue, I just think it's good form, a good communication, and a welcoming atmosphere to bring the tenants into it as much as you possibly can. Now, I know sometimes that's a problem. I get it. But man, when you've had people that lived in your community for 20 years and they're renters, they're members of your community and they deserve that kind of information.
Great. Thank you, guys. And thank you for your question. I'm going to go ahead and mute. Okay. Julie, should the president of the board vote on motions?
Yes, the president can vote on motions. They can make a motion as well.
Okay, great. Let's see. Can people do board meetings via Zoom?
Well, they certainly can. Dave, would you like to take that on behalf of ECHO?
I can go ahead and talk on it real quick.
Can do it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, you certainly can. We actually, if you're a member of ECHO, on our website, it's about in the center of the page, you'll see it says at ECHO we care, because we do care about you and your community, and we offer through our Zoom licensing to host or to set up the meeting for you. You just fill out the registration page or the registration form, I should say, and we will try to accommodate the date and time that you have. We do ask for an alternate date and time in case it's already filled up. But yes, we do offer that service, online Zoom meetings for our ECHO members.
Yeah, and I think we're doing one tonight at 6, right? So that's we do quite a few of them, and it's been well received. So yes, it's a great service, and we hope that you all take advantage. There is some law that's being considered, and not law. It's a memo from the California Law Revision Commission in Davis to make it even easier, especially during the period of emergencies, to be able to have the meetings. One of the stipulations in California law is that you have to have a meeting in place, and this revision would allow it during the emergency not to have that place located, so or stipulated. So and then we did a little video. Julie did a little video with Echo on what the laws are around the meeting. So it's yeah. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is there's all kinds of ways to do it, and the laws changing to accommodate us now.
I'm going to chime in on something a little interesting, just an aside. And I think for those of you out there who are already doing conference calls or Zoom meetings, where I'm up in Washington State and we're doing conference calling and Zoom meetings as well, it's that, have you noticed, because I talk to a lot of people about this, that your meetings are shorter? I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot because sometimes the people who maybe audience members who want to get up and chew the board out or grandstand a little bit, it's not quite as satisfying grandstanding, you know, in front of the phone. It looks a little small on the phone. Got to be in front of me. It looks a little small out there. So it's really interesting. Our meetings have been extremely concise. They're about 45 minutes and they were an hour and 15 before.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed is that there's better engagement. More people are calling into the board meetings than they've had before, and not necessarily just for issues that are cantankerous, you know. So you can call in from anywhere in the world that has good internet connection, so you can get more people involved and engaged, and they can be part of the process. So it's a really good engagement tool.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I wonder if they're going to allow us to continue to do this after we're through this time of great darkness.
Well, the memo that's coming out is actually saying that they're recommending that the law be revised, and we'll be working on that too.
Good, good, yeah.
Great, thank you guys. Julie, when should minutes be released to the general members? After approval at the next monthly board meeting, or can a draft be released?
Oh, you know, I just looked up the law on that in California, and I'm going to defer, but I believe that the draft doesn't have to be put up, but the minutes do once they're approved. So I'm going to actually defer someone to look that up under davissterling.com.
I did, and I actually posted it on the Q&A because several people asked. It's 30 days post the meeting. So, and it's in Davis Sterling 4950.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I just had to look it up for an association I was doing some consulting on in Northern California. And though I did all my managing in California, I've lived out of that state now for almost 20 years, or for 20 years, good heavens. And so I lose track of some of those things because boy, some of it's changed so much, and I work nationally, so.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say, just a caveat, is that this does not apply to executive session meetings.
Right.
So the executive sessions are closed. So.
Yeah, proprietary to the board.
Proprietary, right.
There's a couple questions. I just want to kind of pop back to our previous question about the Zoom meetings. Someone asked, does Echo host the Zoom meeting? So basically all we do is we set it up for you, and we provide you with the information to forward to the people that you need to forward it to, the people in your community, your other board members. And we start the meeting. We make sure that you're prepared. If you have any questions, we're here for you to answer them. And then we're on for maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes of the meeting, just to make sure that you're confident in what you're doing and you're set up, and we help get people into the meeting. And once everyone's in the meeting and you're ready to go, then Echo will leave the meeting and you guys will carry on just as normal. So just to answer.
It's actually a lot simpler than you may think. It's pretty user friendly.
Yeah, it is very user friendly. Let's see. Julie, are there any questions in here that I'm trying to scroll through? There's still 66 in here, so they keep growing. So
okay, yeah. let me flip.
Maybe if you may see some that you think would be beneficial to the group as a whole, feel free to read it aloud.
This is a question in here. Someone, Martha has asked, how about ways for boards to receive communications from members? And so I think, well, what if I get stopped at the mailbox or that kind of thing? I think that's a part of a communication policy, Martha. So you want to make sure and tell your owners what's the best way to communicate with the board, and that you need to decide that and set that up. If you are professionally managed, typically it needs to come through the manager management company portal, or however they're doing it on your website or email. So typically we like things to funnel through the manager. If you're self-managed, Maybe you want to just have, you know, an email address that is like communications at HOA, you know, abc.com or something like that, whatever your association is. And that gets funneled to all the board members or just one or two. And they're the ones who are in charge of it. So whatever works best for you. But the thing is, you must let your owners and residents know where that is. So that's up to you to decide, and then it's up to you to communicate that out to your residents.
All right. This kind of piggybacks off of that. So as a homeowner in the community, if their board doesn't currently have very good community involvement, how do you recommend the homeowner communicating that to the board?
Well, I would suggest that you go to the next board meeting and you offer to be the communications committee and you take that on. And it's probably not the answer you wanted, but you know, typically the problem is that, again, everybody's a volunteer, nobody's getting paid for anything. And so if the board needs to communicate better, step up, help them do it, take it on. You may end up a board member. Maybe that's what you're afraid of. But it can be difficult, but it can be quite rewarding at the same time. And think you're doing a huge service to your community and all your neighbors. I've got one here.
Okay.
Okay,
Awesome.
This is from Helen, and she says, this is regarding membership meeting minutes. More than not have been prepared and presented at the following board meetings, nor have not been prepared at the following board meetings, nor the next membership meeting. When should they be prepared by? Well, they want to, who should prepare them and present them, and who should they be reviewed and approved by the board members? Yes. So whoever is in charge of taking your minutes, if you are self-managed, that is usually the secretary of the association. They are in charge of doing that, and they must be published to the membership, Dave, in 30 days of the meeting. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Yes.
30 days.
Yep.
So that's who's in charge of it. And yes, the board's supposed to approve them. So whoever, if you have a management company, if they are contracted to take your minutes, that's who should be taking the minutes. And you shouldn't have to wait 30 or 45 days for those minutes. You should be getting them relatively soon. If you have a secretary doing it, same thing, should be taking the minutes. I would say the problem is someone doesn't like taking minutes because they're taking, like, you know, the Encyclopedia Britannica of minutes instead of the Reader's Digest version. So hopefully that will help in that one.
All right, thank you. Is it a good practice to assign time limits to each agenda item?
You know, that can make meetings go a lot faster, and that can be quite helpful. And if you have a time, I mean, back in the day when I was a manager, if I had meetings that went on for long periods of time because there was a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth and stuff they shouldn't be doing, and they're off the agenda wandering in the weeds, we would put forth a timed agenda. Now, for example, they want to go, here's the financial statements. Now, everyone should have looked at the financial statements ahead of time, but maybe someone has 2 or 3 questions, allow 3 minutes for that. It may not be 3 minutes, it may go 5 minutes, but at least it doesn't go 10. So yes, the timed agenda can be very, very helpful. Also, a consent agenda can be helpful, especially for larger associations that have a lot of items, meaning that a lot of things can be approved in one motion. And that would be, it's usually things like minutes, financials, the management report, et cetera, et cetera. But timed agendas can be very effective.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we've got time for one last question, and then we will move on to just the last few slides of updates for all of you. Let's see. Let's find a good one. They're all good, but there's just so many.
There are some really good ones here. I mean,
I know, and some of them we've already answered.
Answer these for 3 hours.
Well, we have. You're going to be speaking again in this series. It's a
Next Friday
series. So
yeah.
Next Friday we have some. Hopefully we can address some of these questions before then too.
I hope there seems to be quite a few questions kind of around this topic, but when there's animosity between board members, what is the best way for that to be resolved?
Alcohol. No, just kidding. You know what? That's a really hard situation. It happens all the time. There's usually one or two difficult people, and usually the one is really difficult. And all I can say is that if you want to take a big picture approach to it, a really good thing to do is to set up a board board policy about how you operate. So board guidelines, if you will. And within those guidelines, you want to have how we treat each other at meetings. How we pledge to come. You can't hold them to it. I mean, you can't make them sign it and make them do it. But sometimes if you have these type of things, it'll at least make those type of people aware that the rest of the board isn't going to sit here and listen to that. We really would like you to be cordial. And if you're going to be difficult, and here's another thing, if somebody's really difficult about a particular situation, I mean, I know there are ones that are difficult about everything, but let's talk the one that we can maybe manage. They're difficult about one or two particular issues. Usually it's something they got elected to the board on, was replace the landscape company or replace the management company, whatever it is. It's a one agenda item person. And then they find out they can't do that because they got all the information. They're like, ooh, I was wrong about that. Can't do that now. And they've got a pressure group on the outside still harping on them to get that done, right? And so I would say if there's any way you can redirect that person's energy into something different. So all of a sudden they realize they can't lower dues by 20%, right? Well, there's an agenda vacuum all of a sudden. They've got all this pent up energy. Try and focus them onto something else. So you're like, we have this issue, whatever it is, the community that we know is going to come in down the road. We're going to need to study it. We'd like you to head up this ad hoc committee and get to the bottom of this and report back to us. So you can get a couple more committee members, get people in, start doing on this. So if you can redirect that energy for people who have that kind of animosity or have that pent up energy that isn't being used, that's helpful. It's almost on a case-by-case basis, but I think in the big picture, adopting board guidelines, board of conduct, and bringing them into that process is often helpful ahead of time. So when they're new to the board, they maybe need to sign that they read it. You can't really enforce it, but at least it makes them aware of how the board would like to operate. I empathize. Been there, done that, got the hat and the shirt. So being a manager and being on a board with someone like that.
Yeah, I think, can I chime in here a little bit? Because I get these calls at least one a week, and it is, you learn by trial by fire, and every situation is unique. But there are a few things you can do in your governing documents and in the way you run your meetings, and just various ways. There's a form of governance called policy governance that can work. I think it's prescriptive. It applies constraints, but write that word down. If you have a problem, policy governance is one thing you can do. It's a system of just rules and decorum and what have you, laid out well in advance of the meetings. So that's one of the ways you can do it. For large organizations that tend to be a little more cantankerous, that might be a good solution for you. The other is to sit down and talk. Communication obviously can get you through a lot. I'm going to put a plug here for ECHO in that education is critical. Sometimes having a third party kind of intervene and you say, look, go to this webinar, I know that ECHO has some resources for you. Those are the kind of things that we do every day. And we're objective. Our job is to work for the boards and the homeowners and help communities grow and prosper. So we can also help in those regards as well. So if you have somebody or a way to get good quality education so that the board, sometimes people just don't understand that they can't do certain things because it's so much easier in the private sector to do it that way, and you could. But when you're running an HOA, a nonprofit, a private organization, you're constrained by a set of laws that are very prescriptive, and sometimes it's just good to know that. So, and we provide that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me.
I got one here I want to read.
Okay.
Okay, let me just real quickly. Let me take one last one because this comes up a lot. I get asked this a lot from board members and people I talk to all the time and homeowners. Does the management company run the board meeting or does the board? Well, anyone can chair the meeting actually, but it depends on what you want to do. Usually boards like to run their own meetings and management really just prefers not to run the meeting. But the board may defer to management to move the meeting along. That doesn't mean the board president doesn't act as the real chair, but anyone can really chair that meeting and move it along. That's kind of a decision the board needs to make. But I would suggest, I think boards should run their own meetings, meaning management is there if you have management, but either one can do that. It's up to the board. That's your decision. So.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks, Dave, for chiming in. That was great. I do want to let everyone know about some events that we do have coming up. Next Friday, we'll be seeing Julie again, and for what to do as a new HOA board member. So that is available to register, or you can do that on the ECHO website under events. And then we also have another one coming up at the end of the month. That's HOA insurance and liability, and that one will be open for registration next week. So be looking for that in your emails, and then also on the ECHO website. So we hope to see you all there, and I'm sure Julie will have amazing content next week.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anything less. You're awesome. Okay, and I do, Julie, would you love to touch on this?
Oh yeah, so for all you board members out there, even it's really good for homeowners, let me introduce you to my class material. And I've partnered with ECHO on bringing these to you. I have a series of online classes for board members, particularly new board members, but I find that many of them could have been board members for 5, 6, or 7 years and don't know these things. So it's called CAM 101 for board members. And class 1, there's 4 classes, 4 classes, and class 1 is the basics, and that will help new board members gain an understanding of how associations are governed and administrated, and it will also give you ideas of the difference between condominiums and PUDs and even some townhomes, and also familiarize you with the language of community management. So it's absolutely packed with information. The first one is about an hour long, and we're offering that to ECHO members for free. And that's normally they're $22, but you can go, I think, do you guys have that on the ECHO website where they can access that, Hannah?
Yes. So that'll, and then you'll also receive the link, and we'll reiterate the promo code for our ECHO members in your post-event materials. So that'll be another resource.
Yeah, so you can get it online through ECHO, or you can go through my website and you can access it as long as you use the ECHO access code, and you have it on here. I think you do, yes?
Yes.
Or that's on your website, okay.
Yeah, it's also on the slide too.
And then there's 3 more, which are $22 each. And I think you find them a tremendous resource that is just super convenient. You can take it anytime, and you'll have access to it for about 30 days once you sign up. So there you go. Great information for new board members.
Great. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And I just want to wrap up today, and thank you so much to Julie, our speaker. She did a wonderful job today. And thank you to our program sponsor, Heritage Bank. Thank you so much for sponsoring today's webinar. We very much appreciate you. And again, everyone, so these webinars are free for people who are not members, but there's also so much more information and resources available to ECHO members. So I really encourage all of our non-members to join the ECHO membership. And if you're interested in that, you can email jprice@echo-ca.org, or feel free to give us a call at our office, and that number is there below. And you can also look it up on our website, echo-ca.org. We'd love to have you be a part of our membership community, and there's a lot of resources and perks to being an ECHO member. So if you'd like to learn more, reach out to us. And thank you again, everyone that joined us today. We will see you next Friday for part 2 for new board members.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.